Hello. So I want to present the Elizabethan worldview, which was the worldview of the English society during the reign of Queen Elizabeth the First. So first, some background. The Elizabethan era is marked by the reign of Queen Elizabeth the First, who reigned from 1558 to 1603. This period of time is called the English Renaissance and is known for the thriving of theatre, music, and literature. The era is most famous for its theatre, obviously, as William Shakespeare and many others composed plays that changed the existing opinion on theatre. Um, the chain of beings was a theory that was dominant under Queen Elizabeth's reign, which is based on a Greek philosopher called Aristotle's concept of the universe. According to this theory, there was a religious structure, which meant that everyone had a function and a place in the society according to he or she's or its his or her, intelligent mobility and capability. And nobody was allowed to break out of this order, which meant that no one could move from one social class to another. And religiously, God was on top and ruled everything, and God was known for standing outside the physical limitation of time, and he had reasons such as reasons, love, and imagination like everybody else. But on top of that, he also had omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. And then there was the angels. They were pure spirits and had no physical bodies. So if they had to visit the physical world, they would supposedly build temporary bodies out of particles of air. Like God, they had reason, love, and imaginations too, and stood outside the physical limitations of time. However, they came short in omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. This means that they lacked the power to control everything, know everything, and to be everywhere. Besides this, they also possessed speaking the language when they went down on Earth. And on Earth, it was order everywhere. Down here, humans were on top, and like angels, they were spiritual beings, but was, however, also tied to a physical body. They had a hard time balancing between the divine and the animalistic part of their nature. So an angel, for example, only had an intellectual sin, whereas humans also had their physical sins, such as lust and love and all that kind of stuff. And they had sensory attributes such as sight and touching and tasting and hearing and smelling. And society reflected this order with its fixed classes, as I already said, from highest to lowest. So on top you have the king, the churchman, the nobles, the merchant, and of course the peasants at last. And even the animals had their own order too. The lion being the king, and then every other animal working down from there. And they had physical appetites and sensory attributes, such as the same as the humans have, but they did have limited and mental attributes. Among the plant life, the most superior was the tree sword. The oak was the king, and like any other creature, they had the ability to grow in size and reproduce. However, they lacked both mental attributes and possessed no sensory organs. And the minerals was the absolute lowest ranked. Among them, gold was the most superior. They didn't have any of the abilities of other creatures like mental attributes or reproducing, but humans thought the minerals possessed magical powers. And now I want to talk about the science of the zodiac, which is a term that shows how it was popularly believed that the fortunes of everyone and everything were affected by the events in heaven. Excuse me. The signs of the zodiac were important to everyone. What star you were born under would determine what kind of person you would be and what kind of life you could expect to live. And then there's the four elements of creation, and it was believed that everything that existed on Earth was made from a combination of these four elements: fire, air, water, and earth. And these four elements had their counterparts in the human body. The elements had predominance. The elements that predominates the body determines the mood of the person. So you could be sad or melancholic and so on. Um, the Wheel of Fortune, back then it was widely believed that fate or fortune was the main control uh, force in life. Just as part of a wheel moves from a low to a high position or from a high to low, so does a man's life. A man in a high position could expect to suffer some disappointment or fail because he would own change in fortune. Uh, and similarly, a man in an unhappy, lowly position could hope for a change in fortune, consequently a rise to a higher position. However, there was no way of knowing where the wheel would stop, where fortune would lead. The decline into misfortune or death was seen to be linked to the beginnings of autumn and the approach of winter. Improvements in one's fortune were linked to the renewal of life in spring and the fruitfulness in summer. The music of the spheres was another popular belief that related to the divine chain of being, uh, and was that the universe was made out of numbers of spheres contained within one another. All these spheres were believed to be made out of a transparent crystal-like substance called aether, and the uttermost sphere, uh, in which all the stars were embedded, was called the firmament. Inside this outer sphere were a number of smaller spheres. They carried the sun, the moon, and the planets. The earth was the center of the universe, and the spheres were said to make musical sounds as they moved around. These sounds were in harmony and showed the harmonies no showed how working together as a whole worked in harmony. And they were not literal and audible sounds, but rather a mathematical concept. So yeah, that's what was known as the music of the spheres. And fate was really important when you lived in the Elizabethan time. Uh, you had a specific thought upon your fate. Life was predestined, so you couldn't change it, and it was controlled by God, so you couldn't really do anything. This meant that whatever happens to the human, it wasn't their own fault, because it was already decided for them. God would kind of decide what would happen for everyone. And at last, microcosm and macrocosm, which is a Greek compound where micro and macro respectively stands for large and small. And the words cosmos means order as well as world, or put together, ordered world. In the Elizabethan worldview, the macrocosm is the universe, and the microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm in every being and every object on Earth. The concept of micro and macrocosm therefore views the person as a smaller, or represents the person of a smaller representation of the universe, and the universe was an anthropomorphic existence. So yeah, that was some stuff about the Elizabethan worldview. Thank you.